Now, Vladimir Putin has signaled his next move from Beijing, promising a pretty deadly, shifting assault across Ukraine. The Ukrainian defenders are bracing for a storm as Kyiv's European allies are warning that Russia is actually gearing up to mount a new offensive. Now, speaking in Paris, Volodymyr Zelensky has warned the West that in 2 years, the Russians will have many missiles with a range of 5,000 kilometers, and the sea will not protect anyone. The ocean will not protect anyone. And our next story unpacks all the developments. Take a look.
Across Ukraine's battered front lines, there's terror in the trenches and a growing sense of dread in war rooms from Warsaw to Kyiv. Ukraine's ranks are dangerously thin. Infantry brigades tell of entire platoons missing. The weapon stock is also running dry, while Russian attacks darken the skies overhead. The battlefield is evolving. Conditions worsen month by month. The front remains static in places, but Russian missiles and unmanned aircraft now strike with punishing density, hitting railways, blacking out cities, and paralyzing vital supply lines. The Ukrainian port city of Odessa is the latest to bear the brunt of Russian assault. Intelligence agencies across the West are watching with growing fear as Vladimir Putin masses his forces, readying a new brutal offensive. Speaking from Beijing, Putin projected an aura of absolute confidence, boasting that his army is advancing at will as Ukrainian ranks are empty.
This is evidence of the fact, as not only we believe but also, by the way, Western experts do as well, that the reserves of the Ukrainian armed forces are becoming smaller and smaller and combat-ready, so to speak. Units are staffed today by no more than 47–48%. The situation for them is already at the most critical point. But, nevertheless, combat operations are a complex and cruel thing, so no predictions should be made here. But the analysis is exactly the one I just described.
European leaders and Ukrainian President Zelensky are meeting in Paris to agree on security guarantees for Kyiv in the event of a peace accord with Russia to end the war.
Today we have 26 countries that have formally committed themselves. Several others still have to clarify their position, but 26 countries have committed themselves to deploying troops in Ukraine as a reassurance force, or to being present on the ground, at sea, or in the air to provide this reassurance to Ukrainian territory and to Ukraine the day after the ceasefire or peace.
The guarantees by the so-called Coalition of the Willing, which remain under wraps but are expected to include ramped-up training for the Ukrainian army and deployment of troops by some European states, have angered Russia.
Ukraine is a sovereign nation. If Ukraine wants to have security guarantee forces in Ukraine to support the peace deal, it's up to them. Nobody else can decide about it. And I think we really have to stop making Putin too powerful.
European leaders are concerned that Russia will mount a new offensive on Ukraine. Zelensky says that Russia had relocated 100,000 soldiers to the front line outside the city of Pokrovsk, a Ukrainian-held stronghold in the eastern Donetsk region, which Russia has been trying to capture for months. Zelensky told his European counterparts that the threat for Moscow isn't to Kyiv alone, and European nations could be Putin's next targets. The next few days are important as Russia is sharpening the attack while the West is trying to formulate a clear strategy to stop the Russian forces. Bureau Report, WION The World.
All right, so joining us on the broadcast, we've got our correspondent Ross Cullen, who's joining us from Paris. So, Ross, this of course, was a summit, largely a virtual one, of 30 Western leaders. Now, give us a sense of what the purpose of this summit-level meetings was, because one was under the impression that when the leaders went and met Donald Trump in the United States of America, things were pretty much sorted. But what is this meeting trying to accomplish, and what sort of security guarantees can the Europeans provide to the Ukrainians without the American security umbrella?
Well, they've announced that 26 nations will be ready to take part in deploying troops inside Ukraine the day after any peace agreement is signed. It's also about, for example, seeing if there are any navies, the French Navy, the British Royal Navy, who will be able to deploy warships off the Ukrainian ports, for example, Odessa, to protect the sea lanes, and to discuss with the Americans and the US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, present here at the Elysee Palace, also to discuss with the Americans how their security guarantees for Ukraine might look, because it's crucial, the Europeans say, that there is a backstop provided by the US, that there is participation by the Trump administration in providing future guarantees to Ukraine to ensure that there is no further Russian incursion inside Ukrainian territory. Emmanuel Macron, in the closing press conference after today's meeting, did say that he believes it will be finalised, it will be properly defined in the coming days how the US security architecture for Ukraine as part of those guarantees will look. Also, there was a call with Donald Trump that was held via video link with the leaders here, speaking to the US leader directly, and both of them agreeing, Emmanuel Macron and Donald Trump, there should be an increase in the sanctions on Moscow if there is no movement by Russia in the coming days towards holding that much discussed bilateral summit between Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky. So the outcomes of today's meetings, we have an increase in the number of nations that are willing to deploy troops. We apparently have a timeline now for the announcement of what security guarantees will look like for Ukraine from the United States, and also they want to see movement in the coming days by the Kremlin towards agreeing a place for that bilateral summit between the two presidents.
Interesting. Thank you very much indeed, Ross Cullen, for joining us with all those details there. For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.